So, what is this play really about? When I read Hamlet for the very first time in grade 7, I felt that the entirety of the play was about, the teen strife that Hamlet goes through, and how that's elevated in a sense to the level of a prince who is stuck in the past. Thus, I didn't really understand the whole premise or dark themes behind the play, but when I read it again at a much older age, and then I also read it just this past semester in English, I feel I understood the novel a lot better. I feel that the play is really centered around revenge and how that turns the lives of the cast upside down, and in turn leads to the other themes in the play, which I see as madness, death, and the action in the play, or rather the lack thereof. So, in regards to revenge in Hamlet, I see it as a central reason as to why the play is such a tragedy. So, when it came to Hamlet specifically, there were many instances where Hamlet became all consumed in it, whether he did anything or didn't do anything aside. He was consumed with this thought of revenge. He brooded over this call to action that was his only role and always doubted himself, never really coming to a conclusion until the last stretch of the play. In the end, when he receives the incentive to finally get a move on and get his plan together and implement it, it all goes downhill. He finds out what he needs to know about Claudius, but after that, he really has no plan other than whether he wanted to, or the fact that he wanted to figure out whether Claudius really had killed his father or not. So in the end of the play, everyone dies save Horatio. When the goal is set by King Hamlet was for Claudius to die as his judgment for what he did to his own kin. This revenge not only consumed Hamlet's being, but himself, literally, and the lives of many others who were in the play, and were essentially innocent to the underlying plot or cause of the play, as there were really only about 4 privy to the deed that Claudius committed throughout the play at all, or at least until the end. Thus, revenge I see as the essential aspect of the tragedy that's Hamlet, and is what drives the play until its tragic ending. So, the enduring themes that I saw in Hamlet when I read it, I saw them as revenge being the main thing, but the themes of madness, death, and the action are prominent throughout, in my opinion. Madness being obvious, as it's something that Hamlet thinks throughout the play as to direct attention from his behavior in a different direction, and in the case of Polonius, it worked perfectly, even a little too perfectly, as he became obsessed with the reasoning behind Hamlet's madness, which he saw as his lust for his daughter Ophelia, when in truth it was just Hamlet fainting it. But in the end, Polonius dies because he couldn't get over this obsession. For Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, same thing. They underestimated Hamlet and his madness, and that led to their untimeliness. But one thing that I wondered throughout the play is whether Hamlet or not became so entangled in his act of madness that he really did become mad to an extent. He believed his acts so much that he became a part of it. Thus, I see Hamlet's case of madness ruling over him, whether it was true or not, as it dictated how he acted in front of his peers and family. Sorry, there's some flies in here. I see death as another big part of Hamlet, as number 1, the opening and the reasoning behind the play is the death of his father's murder, and afterwards Hamlet is obsessed with the idea of death. Throughout the rest of the play, he speaks of it many times, he ponders it, the spiritual aftermath of death, embodied in, like, his father's ghost, physical remainders, Yorick's skull, for example, and the corpses in the cemetery. This death is linked spiritually with Hamlet and his faith and how others view God. For example, the mistrust of the ghost at first, as he claims to be his father, but Hamlet thinks that may be by chance the devil sent to mislead him and commit a tragic act. Thus, the mystery of death leads to the answers of a few of the many questions that Hamlet has throughout the play, such as whether or not his father's ghost is a devil, or whether, which leads to whether or not Claudius is really a murderer or not. And since death is both a cause and consequence of revenge, it's tied to the theme of revenge and justice. Claudius's murder of King Hamlet initiates Hamlet's quest for revenge, and Claudius's death is the end of that quest. The question of his own death is something that Hamlet speaks of throughout the play. He contemplates it, suicide, even though it's morally illegitimate. It's not a morally legitimate action. His world is unbearably painful. His grief and misery is so much that he frequently thinks and yearns for death to end his suffering. But he fears that if he commits suicide, he will be consigned to an eternal suffering in hell because of his Christian religion and the prohibition of suicide. His famous "to be or not to be" soliloquy in Act 3, Hamlet philosophically concludes that no one would choose to endure pain if he or she were not afraid of what will come after death. So I see death as a big reason or theme behind Hamlet. Action is something that I tentatively thought as a theme. Throughout the play, Hamlet considerably goes back and forth on whether or not he should take action or not. And it's one of his big sort of elements in the play, as he lacks the incentive to get going or the reasoning behind it. He prefers to think about it purposefully and methodically, but when he finally does, he recklessly goes about his action violently, to the point also like killing Polonius. Unlike the other characters who obviously don't think much about what they do, such as they just act as they feel appropriate. Claudius possesses himself of the queen and the crown through random acts, but his conscience in the end is what torments him. Laertes resolves that nothing will distract him from acting out of his revenge, but he's easily influenced and manipulated into serving Claudius's end, and his poison rapiers turn, in a sense, back on himself. So I see action as a tentative theme, but something that you really can't ignore when you're thinking or speaking about him. So those are what I think the play is really about, and the themes behind it. So thank you.